Hello, everybody. This is Kevin Moll. I'm the Executive Director of the RISE Association. So I'm happy to see you all, or at least I think I see you there. um, so we're happy to have you joining us here for the webinar. And today I have to apologize. There's a train in the background. So hope you forgive me. This is called the MRR 101, Preseason Management of a Medical Record Review uh, project. So we're looking at a 101 level of before the whole season begins. And so that's the key theme here. Our host sponsor for today's event is Centauri's Health Solutions. And this is a webinar, the latest webinar in a series produced by the RISE Association. It's offered free of charge to folks as a benefit. And we're going to have our subject matter expert speak in just a second here. I'll introduce her. We'll have a slideshow presentation, and we'll be sharing a copy of the slide deck with you after the event is over. And we've got a couple of housekeeping things to go over with you. First of all, everybody's on mute during the entire event. You can send us a question at any time. Just type your question into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen next to the chat bubble. We'll have a Q&A session after the presentation is complete, so we plan to incorporate all your questions into the program at that time. Some questions, of course, are going to be answered in the natural course of the presentation itself. So let's see what else to tell you. We are recording the event, and we will be posting this recording in our library of webinars inside the member portal. If you haven't yet gotten your upgraded your membership to the member portal log on and password and everything, let us know. We'd be happy to send you a link you can use to upgrade and get your passwords and everything set up. Please stay tuned for the entire event, because we're going to have a customer experience survey with the webinar at the very end. It'll be a poll that pops up and remains on your screen for several minutes, so you're able to just check the boxes and fill in any kind of feedback you want to give us. Now, if you have any trouble with the audio on this Zoom meeting, you will be able to look in your chat box. There's a posting that Tracy, our coordinator here, has put in there for you. It'll have a phone call number, so you can use your phone to log in for the audio and watch the presentation on your computer. So thank you for signing in for today's program. And let's go over to our introduction. So let me introduce to you Mary Kay Sander. She's a nurse by training, RN BSN, and she's a master's degree, and she's also, or I see the MA here, is a MA Med Advantage maybe, Senior Product Manager for Clinical Solutions at Centauri. She's completed 16 HEDIS seasons with direct hands-on experience. So it's kind of like saying dog years. She has extensive experience in providing quality program management for health plan teams, as well as in a vendor role. She's developed medical record review programs from ground up, developed abstraction training programs and facilitated the training, and then led the programs from implementation through successful submission of rates backed by best practice and sound abstracted data. Mary Kay uses her years of critical care clinical experience melded with her years of HEDIS experience to share her skills as subject matter expert. In her 3 years at Centauri Health Solutions, she's led 3 successful HEDIS medical record review seasons with a well-trained team of abstractors, and has been part of the ongoing enhancement of the data entry user interface, report creation, and retrieval operations support. So with that, I'm pleased to hand over the presentation here to Mary Kay and let you take it away there, Mary Kay.
Well, I thank you, Kevin, and I promise everyone that I really am a more exciting person than my bio says. I do things other than HEDIS. Really, I do. I couldn't find a cool virtual background like Kevin has, so I'm not turning on my camera today because 5.5 months into sheltering in place, I'm looking way too homeless. And I didn't think that virtual background of a back alley here in downtown St. Louis would have looked appropriate for this. So hopefully you'll enjoy the sound of my voice and you won't hate it by the end of this presentation. So welcome. As Kevin said, my name is Mary Kay Sander. In my role at Centauri, I am the project leader for Centauri's HEDIS abstraction team. I am the pre-season measures, software, and processes trainer for our internal abstraction and retrieval teams, as well as our client teams. I assist with the QA of our abstraction tool called ChartNet. I am one of the subject matter experts on the HEDIS measures and other duties as assigned. So as Kevin also said, the next HEDIS season will mark my 17th year in HEDIS. And if you're brand new and looking for direction and maybe feeling a bit overwhelmed, I've been where you are. If you are a seasoned HEDIS player, welcome. I will be sharing the knowledge that was gifted to me as a new member of the HEDIS Sister and Brotherhood and throughout the years. And hopefully you'll come away from this webinar with a little bit of additional knowledge. While there are many components of a HEDIS data submission project, we will spend our time together focusing on medical record review only. The topics we will discuss are high level. This presentation is meant to stimulate your thought process and give ideas for your consideration. You will hear my general insights that apply to any line of business with a HEDIS submission or any medical record review project for that matter. What are the desired outcomes of a medical record review project? To use clinical data to close gaps and improve quality of care, and to submit the most accurate data to help produce the most sound rates. How you go about getting to the finish line of submission will determine the quality of your outcome. Preparation is key, and the medical record review project plays a vital role. While there may be a million little reasons to attend, here are the top 10 reasons you should attend this webinar. More than one may apply to you. If none of these apply, you may have signed into the wrong webinar and should consider settling in to learn or signing out so as not to end this hour more confused and baffled than when you started. You may be brand new to the idea of a medical record review project and you do not know where to start. You may have successfully completed your very first medical record review season and you want to learn how to improve that experience. You may be a seasoned medical record review project leader and you're looking for ideas to refresh or maybe expand your project. You may be looking for a great way to spend an hour on a Wednesday in August. You may have been part of medical record review projects that did not go so well, and you're looking for practical suggestions so that does not happen again. 2020 has not gone so well in general. You are hopeful 2021 will be better, and you want to do your part to ensure this. You may be wondering if an overreader is something like an overlord, and you want to know more. Stay tuned. You need a renewed excitement about medical record review. You may be curious about the mental status of anyone who has survived 16 HEDIS seasons. I'm fine. And you may have never heard of medical record review, but you heard all the cool kids do it. This webinar is for you. And
Sounds like we have a little technical problem here with Mary Kay's audio, so hang in there with us for a moment here. See what we can do to get this fixed up.
Can you hear me now, Kevin?
I gotcha. 4x4.
All right. I fell into the hole of the Apple AirPods not working with Zoom. It was too good to be true. I knew it was.
Been there, done that.
All right. So I'll start by defining some terms commonly used during the HEDIS season, just in case you're new or you need a refresher. And let's see. Are you still able to see my screen, Kevin?
Let's see. I've got it's a black sort of screensaver type thing, Centauri Health Solutions.
All right. It looks like Zoom kicked me off. I am so sorry.
We've got slides here, so you just have to find the bookmark where you left off.
All right. I know right where I left off. There we go. All right. So I'll start by defining some terms that you may commonly use during the HEDIS season, just in case you're new or if you need a refresher. Administrative measures have specific requirements where the data points are fulfilled by claims and encounter data. Hybrid measures are those where administrative data helps with the where to find the records, and the medical records help you with the what services did the member receive and what were the results. Abstraction is the action of reading records, finding information, and performing data entry. An abstractor is the person who does this. A sample is the pool of members who qualified to be in the measure and were randomly selected. It is represented by a specified number of member measure combinations. So keep this in mind, it'll be important later. An exclusion is a member that is removed from all samples because of a required or optional reason. For example, if a member elected to use hospice at any time during the measurement year, that member is removed from the sample and replaced with the next member in numerical order from the oversample so that your total sample number remains consistent. The oversample is an additional number of records above the required total sample number, drawn randomly, to fill the place of a sample member that is removed because of an exclusion previously mentioned. A chase is the where of the medical records that might help you gain compliance for that member. It is the physical location where you will go because you expect to find the record and is represented by a member measure location combination for hybrid measures. One or more chases make up each individual set of member measure combinations. Case logic is applied to a sample to ensure consistency within measures when creating chases. For example, for the controlling high blood pressure measure, you may first want to chase to the member's current PCP, then to a cardiologist, then to the provider who saw the member the latest in 2020. You could apply this logic to all members for this measure so that the locations of the records you need for a measure are chased consistently. Provider location cleanup includes filling in the blanks and another process to ensure consistency when chasing medical records, known as address normalization. An example of a thorough cleanup has all versions of Dr. John Smith's address at 123 Main Street, Suite 321, HEDIS USA, reading the same. Street and suite will be spelled out or abbreviated the same. Any iteration of Dr. John Smith's address will be identical for each chase, so that when the chase list is alphabetized and outreach is made, it's one phone call for all of Dr. Smith's members in all measures. This process also ensures that missing information is filled in. This is all done prior to the start of the outreach process and is a subject that could fill its own webinar. MRRV, Medical Record Review Validation. It's important, and it ensures that measure specifications are applied correctly by abstractors and overreaders. This required process begins when medical record review ends. The auditor chooses several measures and 16 samples deemed as compliant for each measure to survey your project's accuracy. They look at what is in the record versus what was data entered that the software saw as compliant. You or your medical record review vendor must pull these records and screenshots of the data entry screens, and you have to prove the compliance and then provide these to your auditor for review. The soundness of your medical record review project is proven by passing MRRV. I'm proud to say that Centauri has flown through the MRRV process with no errors for the 3 years I've been here. It's time for a little participation. So tell us how you define your experience with a HEDIS medical record review project. Are you a newbie? Are you seasoned? And what did you say this webinar is about? So it looks like we have a fair amount of newbies and nobody has signed into the wrong webinar. So good for you. Everybody is here. And again, seasoned folks, I am glad you are here. So now let's move along to the mandatory parts of any medical record review project. My friend Shao here introduces us to the mandatory components of a HEDIS medical record review project, and isn't he adorable in his tiny little mask? All organizations submitting HEDIS data to NCQA must be audited by a licensed organization that employs certified auditors. This is a company that you hire. That licensed organization assigns an auditor to you, and the relationship begins. We will delve a bit deeper into this relationship shortly. You also need software. You must have a tool into which your abstractors will enter data found in medical records. As with the auditor, we'll discuss your options for software in a bit. Roadmap. This is an acronym for Record of Administration, Data Management, and Processes. This document, once completed, gives your auditor information on your planned processes and assists in the planning of the on-site visit. Section 4 is the medical records section, and by October 1st, you should be prepared to begin soliciting internal stakeholder answers, vendor answers, and begin completing your own answers, as it might take you a while to pull them together. The full document, all sections, are due January 15th to the 29th of 2021. This is on NCQA's timeline, but your auditor may want to see it earlier, so be prepared. Medical record collection and review will provide you with the data you need to submit rates for the hybrid measures. You can get some of this from supplemental data, but there are still measures that need a good old-fashioned look at records to fill in the blanks. Supplemental data is a whole nother webinar, so we won't go any deeper into it here. You will need resources to secure the records from providers and medical record vendors, and you will need resources to read those records and pull out specific data points. Once again, we'll delve more deeply into this in a bit. This section will cover things to consider that ensures best practices for preparing your medical record review project. I can't make the decisions for you. The answers involve budgetary considerations and leadership decisions from within your own organization. I will, however, give you questions and information that will point you toward the answer that best serves your organization. Your auditor will assist you within the guidelines and standards set by NCQA for conducting HEDIS audits. He or she works for you, has the best interest of your project in mind, and helps you report the best rates possible. This slide gives you the link to the list of the licensed organizations on ncqa.org. Since MRR is only one part of a HEDIS audit, now is the time you should collaborate with the other HEDIS team leaders at your organization to make a decision regarding your auditor. If yours is a new project, interview as many organizations as you have time for. Get a feel for their collaboration with a new project, ask for references, consider budget, and consider the fit with your corporate mission. If yours is an existing project, are you happy with your current auditor and audit firm, or is it time for a change? If you're happy with the collaboration and guidance you've received in past seasons, you are prepared to move forward with your preparation. If not, as with a new project, interview organizations, get a feel for their collaboration with an experienced project, ask for references, consider budget, and again, consider the fit with your corporate mission. In the last section, I spoke of the mandatory need for software. NCQA allows reporting organizations to develop their own software and certify directly through them. Doing it in-house takes lots of time and resources. And if you don't have the build started by now, you aren't going to have it done in time for the next HEDIS season. If you take on this task in-house, you do have to follow the same rigorous process for certification as vendors do. Contracting with a software vendor needs to happen now if yours is a new project. If you're an existing project, again, consider if you're happy with your current vendor. If you are happy, you're ahead of the game. If not, contracting with a new vendor needs to happen now to allow time to transition data and processes to the new vendor. As with your auditor, software vendors work for you and are most interested in helping you report the most sound and accurate data possible. They generally don't contract in the last quarter of the year due to the preparation and testing needed when onboarding a new client. You need to have the maximum time to gear up for that success. This slide gives you the link to the list of software vendors certified by NCQA, and Centauri is on that list. Who is going to bring you your records? Are you going to conduct retrieval of records using in-house resources, or are you going to hire it out? Perhaps your risk adjustment team includes a retrieval team. Will they share? Will your abstractors also conduct retrieval? There are vendors that will take care of retrieval for you, and of course, Centauri is one of them. You will need resources to make outreach to the record locations, send follow-up faxes or emails, and to secure incoming record files and make them available to your abstraction team so they can review them. The deep dive into all that goes into retrieval is yet another topic that could fill an entire webinar. But this is what you need to get started with planning. Same with abstraction. Who's going to read your records and do the data entry? Are you going to use in-house resources for record review, or are you going to contract out for this? We will discuss retrieval and abstraction more very shortly. Now let's discuss who may be working beside you during a medical record review project. These are the key members of an MRR project. Depending on your organization's size, budget, and scope of project, some of these roles can overlap. If you are the project leader, you'll be the person who coordinates resources, meets with your vendors, makes abstraction assignments, answers questions, tracks project progress, monitors individual completion rates and overread scores, maintains the timeline, troubleshoots, abstracts, and overreads when necessary, calms your tired abstractors and cheers them on, provides reassurance to upper management that yes, you are on track, and keeps the project moving forward. Don't forget to breathe and hydrate. Make sure your manager is aware of all the moving parts of the project. You may need help from above for additional resources if, for example, you're 2 weeks into record retrieval and realize you undershot on how many abstractors you would need, or if you're near the end of the project and you need to play catch up. It happens. It's totally dependent on the incoming record flow and how that goes during the HEDIS season, and it's often out of your control. But you may need help if you don't have a backup in place. You may also need help with overreading, or if we ever return to offices, procuring late night snacks. You've heard of the COVID-19, the HEDIS 10 is real. Will you need a supervisor or team lead? It's possible that the project leader can handle the aforementioned task list, but if budget allows, it's always nice to have a backup person, someone who can assist with or take some of those tasks off of your plate to allow you more oversight bandwidth and be the extra person who will hop on board the abstraction and the overreading train. Regarding abstractors with a parenthetical S, depending on your project size, you'll need at least one or maybe more abstractors. How do you know how many abstractors you will need? If yours is a project with a history, the math is easier. If not, follow along. First, determine the approximate number of records your project will have for review. 411 is the sample size for each hybrid measure. Multiply 411 by the number of chases you expect per member measure combination, and you'll have a round number of records. Depending on the results of an analysis of your claims data, you can have 1 chase per sample or 3 or more chases per sample. Say that you determine there are 3 possible places where you might find a record with colorectal cancer screening information. 411 times 3 equals 1,233, which is the maximum number of records you may receive if all 3 chases are needed for that measure. Do the same exercise for each hybrid measure you report, add them together, and you'll have the maximum number of records to expect. I've had experienced abstractors who were super people. They could do on-site retrieval and abstract up to 3,000 records per season. But this is extreme. If just abstracting, an average full-time abstractor can complete 2,000 to 2,500 abstractions, along with an equal number of overreads. Now to the raw math. Say you are expecting to report 5 measures. You determine that each measure will have 3 chases. Your total maximum number of chases is 5 measures, times 411, which is the sample size for each measure, times 3 chases for each sample, which equals 6,165 total records that you could possibly be abstracting. If your abstractors have average experience, this would be a reasonable number for 3 full-time abstractors or 2 full-timers and 2 part-timers. And again, this is the raw math. Of course, it's a rare circumstance where you would be able to retrieve records for 100% of the projected number of chases. So keep this in mind when hiring. You will subtract a percentage of that 6,165 based on your project's retrieval history. How many records did you chase that you were unable to secure? If yours is an experienced project, and if you have retrieved 100% of your records, bravo, good for you. We have come very close, and we are proud to say that we do abstract every record that comes in the door. Another thought regarding that total number of records we discussed, 6,165. A percentage of that number will become compliant through administrative data when you refresh your claims and encounter data. And this happens during the HEDIS season. You can most easily determine this average by looking back at reports from past seasons and subtracting it from that total number prior to determining the number of abstractors. If you don't have a history, don't worry. Here's more helpful math. Look at your provider list and make an intelligent guess for how many will say no to sending records or will claim they've never seen a member or 10. Subtract, for example, 5% of that, 6,165, with the idea that you will be able to collect 95% of your pool of records. Then look at your claims data and a little thing called claims lag, which is how long after a service occurred before the claim is sent in and processed. This is most important at the end of the year, so say claims lag averages 62 days, which takes you to early March of 2021 when you still may be receiving claims for measures you're reporting from 2020. You do a data refresh to pull in the claims relating to the measures you're reporting and estimate that 15% of your total chase count of 6,165 will be made compliant and this refreshed administrative data. So 6,165 minus 5% minus 15% leaves you with a very educated guess of the number of chases in your final pool. Know your staffing candidates. 2 very seasoned full-time abstractors can handle this pool, but having a part-time or per diem person on the project will give you some breathing room. 3 average full-timers will have no problem abstracting 4,900 records. And Tracy, I'll let you catch up with the clicks here. And voila, there is your math. If your project has history, look at last season's abstraction numbers. Did your retrieval and abstraction team secure and review enough records to meet your goal rates? If so, your staffing was right-sized. If not, consider adding additional abstractors. Real life scenario here. You have your entire abstraction crew in place. You've trained them. You're on the verge of starting abstraction, waiting as if jumping into a double Dutch jump rope. So close. And one of your full-time seasonal contractors tells you she took a full-time permanent utilization review position with a Medicare plan. And she feels really bad about it. And she was a huge producer and very accurate. You're happy for her, but really sad for your project. I've also lost a full-timer mid-season as she was truthfully near death. Really sad. What to do? When preparing, it's always good to build in a part-timer or two or one or two per diem folks who are fully trained and can hop in with more hours should a full-timer exit. Trust me, it's worth the training investment to not lose progress with your project should the unforeseen happen. Will your abstractors be RNs only, coders, LPNs, non-clinical people trained to abstract the less complex measures? Maybe a mix of all of these. Any of these options can lead you to a successful project. You just have to find the right people and background combinations. I, raise my right hand, am a reform stickler for an all RN LPN staff. Once I met and witnessed the magnificence of coders, I was sold and regularly consider them for my staffing mix. I worked for an insurance company once whose VP of quality insisted that we would hire the bare minimum regular staff and later train people from within our organization if we needed help. The idea was to engage people who were interested in what the abstraction team did. Any people, no matter what their day job was. I was so leery of the success of this idea, and as it turns out, I was right. The people I was given for mid-season catch-up help were a manager from IT as well as a regional manager from sales. You guessed it. Very nice and smart people in their own areas, but had never seen a medical record, much less read one. We needed them up to speed now. And it took me so much time in the middle of running the project to teach them how to find a BMI in a record, then use PDF editor to highlight said BMI. I didn't even bother to train them on the software tool. Needless to say, we did not get a good return on our quick training investment, and those two poor souls ran screaming for the door, but had a better appreciation for what abstractors do, how much they know, and how hard they work. I, as the abstraction team's fearless leader, became the regular catch-up help for the rest of that season, while performing the data entry for the very few BMIs our help was able to find. Will you use internal staff or will you hire contractors? If contracting, will your HR department handle the hiring process, or will you use an agency? Once you determine the number of abstractors required for your project, your HR department can determine the hiring method based on your organization's processes or internal policies. No matter how you're conducting the hiring process, if not using an all-internal resource team, I recommend getting commitments from contracted candidates by Thanksgiving so that everyone knows where they will land for training after the holiday season, and so that you have first pick from the pool of the most experienced candidates. Regarding overreaders, and again, a parenthetical S, as the number of overreaders needed is directly proportional to the number of records expected to be overread. Overreading, also known as inter-rater reliability, is your QA process to ensure the most accurate data is captured and entered and ensures the success of your MRRV. It is the grading of the abstractor's work. I want to take a moment to mention, for those who may have joined to find out more about overreading, an overreader is granted magical power to use all measure knowledge and determine if an abstractor found and entered the best and most accurate data. Certainly not an overlord, but definitely a HEDIS expert. How do you calculate the expected number of overreads and number of overreaders to handle them? Take the approximate number of records you expect to be abstracted and multiply it by the percentage of records you feel will ensure your data is accurate. For example, if your expected number of abstractions is 2,000, and you feel overreading 75% of these will ensure your most accurate rates and passing MRRV, you will aim for 1,500 overreads. If you have an optimistic heart and want to commit to 100% overread, your number, of course, will be easy to calculate, 2,000 overreads. To further confuse or maybe excite you with some additional math, and definitely a good idea, you can strive to overread 100% or some percentage of positive hits, which are those chases with data that led to compliance, and some percentage, say 60% of negative hits, which are those chases that didn't have data entry or had data that didn't lead to compliance. Your pool of 2,000 chases has 1,200 positive hits and 800 negative hits, of which you will overread 60%. So your total pool of overreads will be 1,680. Breaking your expected number of overreads down to positive and negative hits is most reasonable for an existing project because you have historic data and you can analyze and develop your plan from there. How many chases can an overreader review? You can use the same number of records as you used for determining the number of abstractors. It's always a good idea to start with a higher percentage of overreads until you have a comfort level with the proficiency of each of your abstractors. From there, you can level out the percentage, but do be aware that if retraining opportunities arise and you notice errors on one area or more for one abstractor or more, the percentage may need to go back up, maybe to 100% for one or more abstractors' work. If fulfilling a dual role, your 3 abstractors with average experience should be able to easily overread 1,680 chases in addition to their abstractions. Now that you have the estimated number of overreads for your project, you can return to structuring your project. Is this a role you'll contract for, or will you use internal resources? If you contract out for abstraction, will you use internal resources to overread the contractors? Will your abstractors also perform the QA of their peers' abstractions, fulfilling a dual role? Will you have dedicated overreaders? Was your process effective last season? You can answer this simply by asking yourself, did your project fail any part of MRRV? And again, I'm not going to go any deeper into structuring your overread project, as we could talk about this for a whole nother webinar. Regarding retrievers, and another parenthetical S, as the number of outreach staff and record technicians you require depends on the number of chases and locations. Your retrieval team will be made up of, number 1, people who reach out to providers to arrange record review, mailed, faxed, emailed, carrier pigeoned, or hand-delivered medical records. Number 2, people who make on-site visits to provider offices to directly grab those records. And number 3, people who manage the records when they come in the door, no matter the method. These will be the people who divide up large envelopes of records for multiple member measure combinations and attach them to the appropriate chase for data entry. Do you have the luxury of a dedicated retrieval team? Will your abstractors have a dual role, making phone calls, retrieving the records either on-site or electronically? Will you share the RA team's outreach specialists? Will you need a secure portal to which your providers will load their records, a secure email, a dedicated fax line? Any method requires staff to handle these records when they come through. And this is yet another role for which you can contract with a vendor. How many staff members you'll need is dependent on how many projects and roles your staff will be fulfilling. It is also dependent on your timeline. For example, by what date do you expect at least one attempt to every provider location to be made? How many outreach staff will you need to get you there? It really depends on what staffing mix you're using. If your abstractors are fulfilling a dual role, the additional number you'll need depends on their experience with outreach. Anyone can make a phone call, but you need people capable of thinking on their feet, because provider offices will have questions and sometimes will be reluctant to hand over those records. If you're using an experienced retrieval team, the number you'll need will depend on how many of the 3 retrieval tasks they'll be working. Many factors to consider. Now let's talk about your trainer. Your trainer should be the subject matter expert with a proven track record of high overread scores, high productivity, and an eye to detail. Your trainer can be someone who wishes to share expertise and might transition to supervisor after training, fulfilling that dual role I talked about. Your trainer could be your utility player and fill in where needed. This is also a role for which you can contract with a vendor. Many vendors offer abstraction, overreading, retrieving, and training services. You can't run a medical record review project without data, and you'll need someone who understands data file layouts and structure. Simply, the data analyst pulls data files such as enrollment, provider, claims, and encounter, and will help review rates and troubleshoot rates or data that don't look quite right. Another valuable service your analytics team can provide is to evaluate retrieval success for the prior season and determine if the chase logic was effective. How many records per location were you able to retrieve? Was that enough? And what were the reasons retrieval was unsuccessful? Were there providers that refused to participate? Maybe they need a visit from your provider relations department. This exercise and analysis will help you find this out and will help you to refine your chase logic, and you'll have better retrieval efficiency. Your analytics team can also assist with provider location cleanup, perhaps working with the retrieval team to do the cleanup and make sure the files are up to date before the sample is pulled and chases are created. The details of this are also beyond the scope of your initial preparation, your right now, but you do need to know now who will be performing the work. Even if you contract all services out, you still need someone within your organization who can get your needed data files to your vendor. This needs to be someone who speaks IT language. The role does not necessarily require a dedicated resource, and you won't need this person all the time, but there are times throughout the project when you will need dedicated, uninterrupted time with your data analyst. If your HEDIS project is new, now is the time to determine with who in your organization you'll partner to fill this role. Now that we've explored the must-dos of the best practices for your preparation, the key members, and who you'll be working with during your medical record review project, I want to give you some more food for thought with some additional items you may want to consider before the next HEDIS season begins. Purchasing NCQA's HEDIS technical specifications, say that 10 times really fast, for health plans is a very good idea. The tech specs will help you identify the hybrid measures you're required to submit. If you're new and you're contracting out for services, use your vendors as resources for questions about and understanding of the tech specs. Also, if you are new, the tech specs are where you will learn the HEDIS language. If you're not new to HEDIS, Be sure to read the tech specs and be sure to note changes and how they will impact your project. This is a very important basic step to structuring your project. Regarding using a certified software vendor versus going out on your own, this bears another mention. There are definite benefits to using a vendor, and you can find great choices at the link provided earlier. Your vendor will manage your data, pull your sample, set up chases, assist in understanding your rates at any point in your project's timeline, and will produce the files for your final submission. Your software vendor will also collaborate with your auditor on various parts of the timeline and some important key details. However, if your organization has the knowledge, technical, and time resources, it's a good time to start building the tool for future seasons. Now is the time to give your providers and provider groups a heads up that the next HEDIS season is lurking in the wings, and you will be sending additional information later regarding scheduling for those retrievals. You can solicit information regarding the location of the records. Are they centralized at one location? And if so, where is it? Who's the appropriate contact to call for the records? What were their pain points from the last season? Were your providers surveyed? These are all good tasks to hand off to your provider relations team. Provider data is notorious for being incomplete and or completely incorrect. Your ability to successfully secure those records and gather enough data is highly dependent on the quality of your provider location data. The efficiency with which your outreach team works also depends on the quality of provider data, especially if on-site retrieval is required. Speaking of your provider relations team, now is a good time to engage them. Educate them about the MRR timeline and key MRR activities that involve that provider network you have. In case you need them during the MRR project as a go-between to secure records from, let's call them reluctant providers. You can use your provider relations team to reach out and explore what can we do to get those records. Sometimes it takes showing them the contract they have with your organization and where they signed that says, yes, they'll cooperate in quality projects. For your providers with electronic medical records, now is the time to get a conversation going with these provider groups regarding direct remote access for your retrieval team. If allowed, you're going to need time to get those system permissions in place. You may also need to have an additional conversation with a third-party medical record vendor. That's the keeper of medical records for many provider groups, and they hold on to them tightly. And the earlier this can occur, the better. After decision-making is complete, schedule a kickoff with your internal team to make sure everyone is on point with the project plan and with your timeline. At minimum, your timeline should include training and the 25%, 50%, 75%, 100% cut points of retrieval, reviews, and overreads. You can boost the value of the timeline by adding bullets from the NCQA timeline that you can find in the tech specs, and also include on-site dates, abstraction end dates, and submission dates. Now is the time to update and refresh or create your training documents. Anyone working within your data collection environment should be trained on the scope and all the specifications of your project, including all the hybrid measures you're reporting and basically how to work the software. Look at errors found in overreading last season, and if common errors among the team members, add these to your training presentation. Training should occur early to mid-January so that it's fresh in everyone's minds. Get it on the calendar early so that when you're hiring, you can give the candidates a firm start date. Your documents should be a value add to the expertise of your abstraction and overreading teams. If well structured, they can be used as reference documents for your teams during the HEDIS season and beyond. We have covered a lot of ground in our short time together. Our moderators gathering the questions that were submitted. And while we're waiting, thank you so much for attending MRR 101 today. I look forward to seeing you in future sessions, and good luck with your medical record review projects.
All right. Very nice. All right, Mary Kay. So we've got a question here in the Q&A box that popped up here. And I don't know if we've already covered it in your slides, but let me throw it out here. The question has to do with the timing here. How many weeks is this allowing for, question mark, or starting abstraction on what date?
It was my perfect world. We would always start abstraction in the first week of February. And that never happens. So fingers crossed, you want to work very carefully with your data team, and that would be the team that's setting up your chases to get all of this done and get provider cleanup done by the second or third week of February. That's really best practice. And once the outreach starts, then the record flow begins. And I get very wiggly if I have less than 45 days to abstract, and those are 45 business days. I always build in the weekends as a just in case we need them, but I don't want to ever tell anybody they're there because they're a nice to have. So you want to aim for around 60 business days to be able to fulfill your project. And again, it depends on how many staff you have and how many chases you have.
Makes sense. Yeah. Another question here for you. How do you determine an average number of members in the sample that will require chases?
All right. The sample size, it's always 411. But some of your sample members may be compliant by administrative data. Remember, we discussed this. So you don't have to chase every single chase that you have in your sample. The easiest way is to look at your last several seasons data for how many samples had positive hits from administrative data. You subtract that total number from your total number of samples and you get an average. And voila, you have the number of members in the sample that will require chases. The ones that historically you didn't get a record from a provider in the past, or maybe they've had some gaps in care filled in since then. If you don't have historic data, but you have a software vendor, your vendor can help you analyze your claims and encounter data. And that's very important to getting a reasonable best guess.
Okay, good, thank you. What type of reports have you found most valuable in managing the MRR project?
I love reports, and they are very, very effective in helping you manage your project, especially if it's very fast-paced and you are dealing with limited resources. At a minimum, you need a report that allows you to track project progress at the individual chase level. And you want this in both summary and detail format to give you the focused and the big picture view. You want a report that shows you real-time measure results at the measure level. And you also want this in summary and detail format for the focused and the big picture view. You want a report that lists non-compliant members at the chase level so that you can have a focus on where can you get the most bang for your buck if you have a limited amount of time and more chases that you need records for. And you also need a report that gives you an at-a-glance status of your overreading progress and scores, because you want to know early who among your abstractors might need a little additional training, and it keeps you from having to pick up things at the very last minute before you're pulling charts for MRRV. And if you contract with a software vendor, a reporting suite is something they should offer. So you could have this built for you.
We're closing in on time here. Let me just ask one real quick question that we still have about the situation where somebody's brand new, you know, with being in charge of a HEDIS project. So, you know, who do I talk to get those tech specs? Where's the go-to place?
You want to go to www.ncqa.org, and then you navigate to Shop Our Products, and then you choose HEDIS and quality measurement, and all of the volumes for HEDIS will be listed there, and they'll have a summary for each volume. You can buy either just volume 2, or you can purchase additional ones, but they're all listed there.
Very good. All right. I think that's all we really have time for right now. So let's. I did have a follow-up question just to mention to everybody. Tracy, let's go ahead and get the webinar experience poll up so people can start looking at that and checking the boxes. And as we exit here with this, I just wanted to remark, Mary Kay, you and I talked about the idea of a 201 webinar of this material. So what do you think if we were able to do another webinar on the 201 with the MMR project, or MRR project? You know, Medicare has so many acronyms. What would what would the gist of that be? What would it be about?
We would focus on timing of your project once you're up and running, how to handle sometimes inevitabilities, and how to get your overreading project focused so that you don't have any nasty surprises in MRRV.
Yeah, yeah. So folks, as you're going through this webinar experience survey, you know, there's a spot, I think, down at the bottom. Let me see, there's let's see, in additional topics here. So if you click yes, I think it'll give you an email and then get back to us. I'd just like to get a sense from you guys if you think that would be a helpful thing to do. You know, we want to sort of take your pulse here to see if there'd be something, some interest in that. So let's see here. Just want to remind everyone, we're going to send this out to everybody, the slide deck, as well as a recording of the webinar. You'll get that. You know, if there's any questions about content in this, be sure to get a hold of us. Let us know. We'll get you guys in touch with Mary Kay. Give you guys a chance to chat with her directly. I'm sure you folks would welcome an opportunity to. Mary Kay's obviously got a wealth of knowledge and experience, and she'd be happy to chat with you. Any other thoughts here, Mary Kay, before we wrap up?
I have none, but thank you so much, Kevin.
All right, it's been our real pleasure. Thank you so much for that great presentation. I hope everyone enjoyed that and got a lot out of it. There's a lot of great content, and you'll be able to kind of go back over those slides. As I say, we'll put you in touch with Mary Kay if you wanted to visit with her about any of the content. So thank you so much. We appreciate Centauri Health System Solutions doing the sponsorship today and giving us an opportunity to bring Mary Kay out to visit with you all on this hairy topic. So we do appreciate it. Thank you all. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll visit with you again later. Bye-bye.